How long has it been, chasing the Nine, or musing over visions given to the Drifter by the emissary of the Nine? They are shrouded in so much mystery and intrigue, but how long will it be until they return, and what will happen next? Welcome back, Guardians. My name is Samlab. Today I'd like to take a moment to discuss the Nine with you. As most of you know, I just wrapped up a trilogy of videos all about the Vex, Scorn, and Hive. So think of this like a bonus entry. My submission for the 4th episode of Destiny 2 in 2024. If you haven't watched those yet, definitely go ahead and check them out. I'll throw up a card above and drop the link in the description. The goal of that series was to link past, present, and future events in Destiny all together. But I wanted to take the opportunity to just sit and chat with you all, as I rarely get the opportunity to do this. When it comes to the entity known as the Nine, I believe there are 4 key areas we need to discuss and refresh our memories. The first one is Season of the Drifter. So for those of you who perhaps are new to Destiny, or maybe returning and you just have forgotten what the story is all about, in the Season of the Drifter, the emissary of the Nine, previously known as Orin, an awoken guardian, was sent to the Drifter by the Nine, and she presented him with a gift, the Hall, for Gambit and Reckoning. So for anyone who has no idea what the Hall is a paracausal ontological piece of frozen rock, I'm going to assume, that is hitched to the back of the Derelict, which is a spaceship owned by the Drifter. He pulls this piece of rock everywhere he goes, under the Nine's instructions, as he continues to host Gambit. Now, in the very early days of Season of the Drifter receiving the Hall was all about his experiments and the Nine observing what he was capable of. And there's many lore entries that talk about the Hidden watching the Drifter and talking about how he's began to lose his mind, or he's hallucinating, or he's talking to himself, but they know he's actually talking to the Nine, and there's even suggestions of dark matter being in and around the area where he is when conversations are happening, etc., etc. So the Drifter has had a very strange relationship with the Nine through the emissary, obviously because the Drifter and Orin have a history, and they go way back to Dark Age and very early Destiny 2. The timeline is a little bit foggy on the details, but I believe a lot of the lore entries bring these together, and maybe we'll do a video on that at some point. But basically, during that Season of the Drifter gets multiple visions foretelling certain aspects of the future. And I'll be throwing up some of these clips as I'm talking, because I think it will help to add a little bit of extra context to where my thoughts are going with this. The second point is the Book of Dust lore. The lore in the Book of Dust is really curious. It is the Nine speaking in general. Different entries have different stories. You will see the name Lavinia. She was obsessed with the Nine and went out of her way to look into the Nine. She was also a cryptarch, so she regularly brushed shoulders with Raoul. I believe Raoul even cautioned her about looking too far into the Nine and talked about how certain things might be prohibited. Long story short, Lavinia learns about how the Ahamkara bones work, and she also learns that the Nine were interested in the Ahamkara. And, key fact right here, big one, that doesn't really get discussed at all, is a point that Lavinia discovers that the Nine showed up right after the Great Ahamkara hunt, and nobody had ever in the tower of the last city ever laid eyes on anything like Xur. The Nine was supposed to send 2 emissaries. We have no idea whether Xur is the second emissary. We know that Xur is of a Jovian origin. We don't know whether he was human before or if he's made entirely of dark matter. The lore entries surrounding Xur are also very loose. There's even some lore entries about Tess Eververse mentioning Xur. I believe I did some lore on this before, multiple videos of the Nine. If you haven't looked it up, just go ahead and look at my channel and search for the Nine, and it will pull up like all the latest videos that I have discussing the Nine. And also, Bife and Mylan have some incredible videos discussing the Nine as well that I think will help to add this generative large web of Nine lore that there is available. And it's amazing to me that with the amount of hours all these different individuals, including myself, has sunk into researching, rereading and rereading and rereading the Book of Dust and every other lore entry associated with the Nine, that we still don't have a clear idea of who the Nine are and their objective. But we know that there's 9 of them, and we know that the first 4 are interested in the preservation of the light and the Traveler, and we know that the rest are they are the dark side, essentially, of the group. One of that group was part of the entities that blinded the Lost City sensors so that Gol could attack and basically subjugate the Traveler. And that's how that happened. It was planned by this particular 9-member entity, wanted to see if Gol could do it. Could Gol take the light from Guardians? Because at the end of the day, the 9 are looking to see their own existence, and the closest power that they have to Ahamkara is the Traveler. So that's the quick pre-context as to the Book of Dust. It goes a way further than that. There is a particular lore entry called The Witch, features Savathûn, and Savathûn basically drawing Lavinia into a different dimension. After Lavinia entered the Cocytus gates, is the gate that leads to the realm of the 9. We haven't really had a whole lot of lore about the Cocytus gates. I would love to see the Bungie narrative team do more with that, and I'm hoping that with this video, you know, this is my submission, but I will assume that they have already got some sort of plans in mind. They have for years. So it would be weird for us to enter the final shape and the 9 not be mentioned, and they have, but I digress. I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me head to my third point. Prophecy Dungeon was the 3rd time in all of Destiny's history since Vanilla D2 that we had any mention of the 9 again. And this was particularly interesting because the Drifter and Eris Morn ask the 9 a question. And they ask, what is the nature of the darkness? And their answer to that question, the Prophecy Dungeon. Now, the Prophecy Dungeon's goal was to give us a very loose and interpretive prediction as to what the future is for the Sol system. The 9 answered in riddles. They showed us different aspects of different planets, so we knew that seeing the destruction or partial separation of planets was essentially them for telling us that the darkness would come and take Mercury, Nessus, Titan, and Io. And we've only just gotten back 2 of those planets, technically. We haven't actually gotten back Titan. We've gotten a section of Titan in the same way we've gotten a section of Mars. So it's safe to assume that we will eventually get a section of Mercury this side of 2023 or the other side of 2023 into 2024. And then I would assume that the same would happen for Io, because they all have connective narrative story pieces and things that are important on those planets that may or may not have a bearing for the future of Destiny. Io is particularly important because it has bones of not just Ammonites, but also the bones of Ahamkara. You see Ahamkara skulls, skeletal rib cages, all sorts of dragon-size skeletons that have basically become encrusted into the earth of Io. As well as that, there is the last place that the traveler touched, the cradle, which is on Io, which a tree of silver wings bloomed, and then we obviously had the pyramid in Season of the Rivals that came and took the energy or corrupted Tree of Silver Wings. We're still not entirely sure how the Tree of Silver Wings operates, but it is suggested that the tree bears a fruit. We have no idea what the tree bears fruit to, because every time we get a Tree of Silver Wings, it doesn't get the opportunity to be fruitful. The darkness comes along, disrupts the process, and it ends up bearing no fruit, or the tree dies. It's interesting that we've seen images of a new or additional Tree of Silver Wings. There's two. There's one in the pyramid ship that we face Nezarec on, and then there's a second Tree of Silver Wings within the Traveler. So it's going to be interesting to see if that tree is going to blossom into something, or if there are no plans for that to bear any fruit at all. My fourth point is the Witch Lore. I mentioned this before about Savathûn capturing Lavinia, and she essentially requests that Lavinia tell her every piece of information she has about the Nine. And this is particularly interesting because we don't really know if Savathûn has used or utilized any of the information that she received from Lavinia. There are some lore entries that give us an idea, but there's no concrete evidence, and I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. I've seen time and time again many different lore masters in the community bring new information to light, or old information to light that I had no idea existed. But I'm excited for this topic to be cracked open soon, or maybe later, but we'll see what happens next. My final point is Season of the Deep. So during Season of the Deep, which was the previous season, we're currently in Season of the Witch. During Season of the Deep, Zavala and the Drifter have a conversation, and they are talking about the current events that are happening in Season of the Deep. But the Drifter mentions two things. He mentions Orin, the emissary, and he also mentions the Nine. What he fails to mention to Zavala is that Orin is now the emissary, but he talks about how Orin had feelings for him, the old him, because now he's changed and he's met Eris Morn. So this is the first and only mention we've had of the Nine in seasons. So it's exciting to see that the narrative team are exploring this, and I really hope that we're gonna have a season with that's themed around the Nine, which would make a whole lot of sense. Okay, we're in the end game now. This is it. And we know how much Bungie loves saving the best for last. So here are a couple of points that I think are important for us to hang on to as the story of Destiny evolves post Season of the Witch. So we have the Hive story, and right now we're at somewhat of a stalemate with Eris Morn and Xivu Arath. I did a video which you guys have seen, called Heresy, and that's all about the future of the Hive. The Eris is potentially going to continue the development of sword logic through Oryx's court. Ironically, Xivu Arath has actually spoken about vengeance before, and Xivu Arath talks about how within her court she will take vengeance. She also says that she's going to take vengeance again, and I think it's very clever that Eris Morn, having studied the Books of Sorrow, that the third sister would seek to take revenge, and so Eris chose that that would be her aspect. That is what she would use against the High God of War. So it puts Xivu Arath in a really weird position, because technically, wherever there is war, Xivu Arath is empowered, is enacting war. That is to say, she's taking the first action, because usually the way it works is that the other person has to attack them first. She receives tribute from wherever there's war happening in general. So what's crazy about that is that essentially Xivu Arath has been gaining power even before she was a major player on the chessboard. She was just kind of in the back waiting, collecting all this tribute, and that's why the Hive see Guardians as essentially the same, because Guardians are in a sense operating in the sword logic, because all we do is attack, and ask questions later, and then everything blows up in our face. This is where I believe relations correlate and how things connect. The other important point is the Traveler. We need Savathûn to follow the Witness. It hasn't been made clear how exactly that's going to happen. We know that Savathûn still needs to be revived by Umaru, And we know that Savathûn benefits both from Eris and from Xivu Arath, because Savathûn's court is the court of Coven, and she cleverly encircled her court around both Oryx and Xivu Arath. Whatever happens, Savathûn comes out on top, and this is what I mean, or this is what I meant in my last video when I said she's a master planner. She's probably even more sinister than the Witness itself. She has looked so far ahead, laid plans that are only just coming into effect now, and that we're only discovering the breadcrumbs of and the outcome of what. The other thing that I want to talk about is the Shard of the Traveler. It's really strange to me still, and I did a video on this, about how the Shard of the Traveler still sits in the EDZ. Now, technically, if the Traveler did die, would it mean that the Shard died? So according to Tyra Khan, the Shard is separate and has been mutated. That's the best way to describe it. It's been mutated. But even from that mutated piece of the Traveler, light still persists, and we know that in Red War campaign, Guardians were able to get their light back from this broken piece. Does it mean that even if the Traveler dies, there is potential for a new beginning? That would suggest that the Traveler rejected that piece of itself into the EDZ, knowing fully well that there may be a time where it dies. Some would debate that that's speculation, and I think that's okay. This is just a conversation. It's not a quote-unquote straight-up lore video. However, I think it would make sense for the Traveler to pre-plan as best as it could. The Witness has done a very good job of painting the Traveler in the sense of that it doesn't know what it wants, it just does this thing and follows this logic and has no voice of its own and just runs and blesses people with the light and runs. But I think there is a lot more to it than that, and the Book of Constellations shares a whole lot about the Traveler's plans. That entire lore book has many entries dedicated to the Traveler speaking to the speaker, or the Traveler attempting to communicate and nobody really hearing what it's saying, because it told the speaker that Gaul was going to attack the city and the speaker did nothing. You can check out that lore entry, I'll link it in the description as well. The other 2 points that I want to bring up is the Outer Rim systems. That also includes the Jovians. As of right now, we're in Neptune. Neptune is one of the moons of the Jovian system, albeit one of the moons that are furthest out. The Jovian systems are governed by the Nine. We know that at least 4 members of the Nine do not want the Traveler to die. They equally have a vested interest in the survival of the light, because without the light, they cannot be seeded into existence. But there is also the Veil. If the Witness dies and the Traveler dies, what happens to the Veil? The Veil and the Traveler were essentially the same entity at one point. If the light that's represented by the Traveler goes, one could assume then that the Veil would still continue to exist by itself, and that presents a very interesting post-Lightfall campaign, because whatever the ramifications are or aren't of the Witness winning makes me feel as though Ikora Rey was right in week 2 of Season of the Witch.
I can hardly believe the tactical reports I'm writing. Vanguard forces, pursuing tithes to Hive-communed Eris Morn, have engaged Xivu Arath's troops in Savathûn's throne world. We are caught between the sister gods of combat and lies, and we're trying to resurrect the one who's caused us the most suffering. Even if we win, we lose. We accepted an impossible bargain. Savathûn knew we couldn't defeat Xivu Arath. No one can win a battle against war itself. Eris understands this better than any of us. I know she's working on a plan, but I must still prepare for unexpected outcomes. If her transformation is influencing her judgment, how would I know? What could I even do to keep her safe? Guardian, be careful. We've lost so much to the Hive already. We can't let them take any more.
And I think she's right, that if the Traveler is defeated, there's still other problems to deal with. There's the Hive, there's the Veil, and we know that Savathûn knows everything about the Veil, and we know that the Nine don't want the light to go, and we know that Savathûn knows about the Nine, and we know that the Nine have other interests and their attention is elsewhere, according to what the emissary last said to the Drifter. These are my thoughts for this video. Let me know in the comment section what you think is going to happen. Let me know what your thoughts are about this current season, and let me know what you think about whether the Veil can survive without the Traveler around. But that's all I have for you. Hopefully you have enjoyed watching and listening to today's video. If you did, be sure to comment below and give this video a like, and consider subscribing and click the bell to find out when my next lore video goes live. Remember that no matter what you're facing at this moment in time, you can do all things. Stay safe and Godspeed.